Chapter 8. The Scroll in the Wall, Josiah's Discovery. Around 622 BCE, workmen were repairing the temple in Jerusalem. They were not priests, they were not prophets, just laborers moving stones and patching old walls. And one of those walls, something turned up. A scroll. It wasn't glowing, it wasn't wrapped in gold, just a rolled up piece of parchment, brittle with age tucked behind stone. But it would change everything. The scroll was brought to Hilkiah, the high priest. He passed it to the royal secretary, Shaphan, who read it aloud to King Josiah, a young ruler with a deep interest in reform and a growing need for control. The king listened, and something shifted. He tore his robes in grief. Then he acted. Josiah launched one of the most aggressive religious crackdowns in Judah's history. He shut down local shrines, destroyed altars outside Jerusalem, removed priests, and summoned the people to hear the scroll and renew their promise to Yahweh in Jerusalem, at the temple, under royal supervision. This was no ordinary find. What was the scroll? The text doesn't tell us exactly what the scroll said, but it tells us how it landed. When the king heard the words of the book of the law, he tore his clothes. 2 Kings 22:11. And later, great is the wrath of the Lord, because our ancestors did not obey the words of this book. This isn't casual reflection. This is alarm. Something in that scroll told Josiah that his people had failed and that punishment was near. Most scholars agree the scroll was likely an early form of Deuteronomy, or at least its central chapters, not the full Torah, not Genesis, not Leviticus, just the part that insists. Worship only at the place the Lord your God will choose. Be loyal to Yahweh alone. Obedience brings blessings. Disobedience brings curses. It wasn't presented as new. It was framed as something ancient, lost, and now recovered. But that framing served someone. Text and power. The scroll didn't fall from heaven. It wasn't handed down on a mountain. It was found in a building during renovations under the oversight of the temple establishment at a politically useful time. Its message: convening, one God, one altar, one capital. That's not just theology. That's centralization policy. Josiah had seen the instability of regional religion, scattered shrines, local priesthoods, ancestral practices outside state control. He wanted one system, one voice, one place. The scroll gave him a divine reason to enforce it. Whether the scroll was newly written, newly edited, or truly ancient is still debated. But it surfaced at just the right moment with just the right message for just the right king. That's not divine timing. That's politics.
The prophet Huldah. After hearing the scroll, Josiah sent messengers to a prophet named Huldah, a woman unusually prominent in a male-dominated religious world. Huldah didn't hesitate. She confirmed the scroll's warning. Judgment is coming. But she also reassured the king, because your heart was responsive, you will be buried in peace. Your eyes will not see the disaster I am going to bring. This moment matters. A prophet didn't just echo the scroll, she interpreted it, and in doing so, she gave the entire episode moral legitimacy. Huldah's voice turned a found object into sacred law. She made the scroll a national command, and Josiah the leader who would enforce it, reform by demolition. With divine backing secured, Josiah moved quickly. The Bible lays it out in 2 Kings 23. Remove foreign objects from the temple, fired priests who served outside Jerusalem, demolished rural shrines, altars, and sacred groves, disbanded ancestral practices tied to Baal, Asherah, and the stars, celebrated a national Passover not seen since the days of the judges. This wasn't just religious cleanup. It was a targeted dismantling of decentralized religion. Josiah wasn't just purifying worship. He was consolidating authority. The scroll said, "Worship only where God chooses." Josiah said God chose here, Jerusalem. The king in the book now spoke with one voice. What archaeology shows, the biblical account paints Josiah's reforms as a sweeping triumph revival. But the dirt tells a more complicated story. Archaeological evidence shows local shrines continued to operate into later decades. Figurines and household idols were still in use. Blessing inscriptions mentioning Yahweh and Asherah appear in homes. This tells us what the Bible doesn't say. People don't shift beliefs on command. Josiah imposed reform from above, but down below in kitchens, doorposts, and hilltop shrines, older practices persisted. The scroll may have become state law, but faith still lived on the street. A new standard. The scroll found in the wall didn't just change Josiah's reign, it redefined the past and set the bar for the future. From that point on, kings would be judged by the scroll's standard. Did they worship Yahweh alone? Did they centralize worship? Did they obey the book? Even Josiah's own legacy was written through that lens. He wasn't remembered for military victories, but for reading, repenting, and reforming in later books, especially Chronicles. He becomes the gold standard of obedience. Text was no longer just memory, it was now the measure of history. The rise of written authority. Modern scholars see this moment, Josiah's reform, based on the scroll as a critical turn in the formation of what we now call the Bible. Why? Because it's where three things come together: sacred text, prophetic endorsement, state enforcement. This is where writing becomes law, where interpretation becomes power, where faith becomes policy. The scroll didn't just guide worship, it reshaped how Judah saw itself, how it remembered its kings, and how it imagined its covenant with God. Later editors, who shaped Deuteronomy through Kings, used this framework to retell the entire monarchy. Good kings followed the scroll, bad kings ignored it, and disaster followed disobedience. The scroll wasn't just rediscovered, it became the lens through which the entire biblical history was refracted. It didn't fall from heaven. This is the thread running through the whole story. The scroll didn't fall from the clouds, it was found by human hands. It was read by a scribe, confirmed by a prophet, enforced by a king. It's not fiction, but it's not magic either. It's a political and religious moment built out of necessity, ambition, and timing. That doesn't make the scroll a lie. It makes it a tool, used to steer a nation to find authority and silence competing voices. What we're left with, we don't have the scroll, but we have what it started. A model for reading is obedience, a pattern of enforcing belief by law, a system where words on parchment carry more weight than the voices of the people. Josiah didn't invent scripture, but he showed the world what happens when you tie sacred text to state power and let the king do the reading. That model didn't stay in Judah, it went global. And it still shapes how people hold the book today.